I mean, but he's just going to walk in when he walks in, yeah?
Yes.
And he wants
Everybody
to
will
stand.
stand.
You okay now?
We're starting the event. Everyone, we're starting the event.
They're here. They're all waiting. They're sitting.
Just stay in the
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister of Israel.
Nice to see you, please.
Prime Minister Bennett, Ambassador Erdan, distinguished guests here in New York and on Zoom, friends watching worldwide. My name is Mark Wilf, and I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Jewish Federations of North America. Welcome to this most significant and meaningful gathering of Jewish leaders in North America with the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, Naftali Bennett. Today marks two important events. First, we're here to welcome Prime Minister Bennett following his first address to the UN General Assembly as the elected leader of our beloved Jewish state. Any occasion to welcome the leader of Israel is an auspicious one, but even more so when that leader has just stood in front of the world and demonstrated the vibrancy of Israel's democracy and the power of Israel's moral leadership. Kol hakavod, Mr. Prime Minister, on this meaningful remarks at the UN this morning. Second, we meet on the seventh and final day of the holiday of Sukkot. Today is also known as Hoshana Rabbah, which is our tradition, is the final day of the period of introspection and repentance that begins at Rosh Hashanah, reaches its apex at Yom Kippur, not its apex, sorry about that, and concludes today. In synagogues around the world today, Jews are circling the Torah 7 times. Just as a couple circles each other 7 times in the Jewish marriage ceremony, we are reminded today how interconnected we all are and how deep is our individual and collective responsibility for the future of the Jewish people. It is because of how interconnected we all are, Mr. Prime Minister, that I'm especially honored to note that we are joined today in person and on Zoom by the leadership of many of North America's amazing Jewish organizations, those that bring Jewish life to our communities, joy to our children, care for our needy, and of course, support for Israel and Jews worldwide. And we are joined by many of the leaders of the 146 Jewish federations across North America, all of whom work daily to build flourishing Jewish communities, communities that are healthy, safe, caring, welcoming, and inclusive, educated and engaged, involved in our broader society, and deeply connected to Israel and the global Jewish people. Thank you to all who have joined us in person and on Zoom. And Mr. Prime Minister, please know that if COVID restrictions and the rapid approach of this evening's Chag were not factors, there would be thousands here in person to join in this celebration of Sukkot and of Israel on the world stage. The largest of our Jewish communities in North America is, of course, right here in New York, and we are blessed with the leadership in that largest community of the UJ Federation of New York. We are honored today to be joined by its president, Amy Bressman, its chair, David Moore, and its CEO, Eric Goldstein. It's my privilege to invite the president of the UJA Federation of New York, Amy Bressman, to bring greetings and to introduce Israel's distinguished ambassador to the UN, our good friend Gilad Erdan. Amy.
Good afternoon. I am deeply honored and privileged on behalf of our New York community to welcome Prime Minister Bennett for his first meeting as Prime Minister with the American Jewish community. The American Jewish community has an unshakable bond with our Israeli brothers and sisters. And like all the federations across the country, Israel is at the core of who we are at UJA Federation. Since UJA's inception in 1939, we have been partners in the miracle of what is now the State of Israel. Throughout this period, our support has taken many forms. Presently, we are focusing on helping Israeli citizens on the margins. We are committed to strengthening a shared society and are so excited to be building in partnership with the municipality of Jerusalem and the government of Israel a $50 million performing arts campus. Built in the center of the capital, the campus is an important addition to boosting the vibrancy of Jerusalem. During this very difficult period of COVID, we have also been there providing emergency relief to help address food insecurity, assisting with small business loans, employment training, financial counseling, and more. We are your partners, and we stand with you every day in whatever way possible. It is now my pleasure to introduce Ambassador Gilad Erdan, who serves in the dual role as Israel's representative to the UN and Israel's ambassador to the US. In countless ways, Ambassador Erdan has distinguished himself during his time in the States. He has worked tirelessly to tell the story of the State of Israel, often in very challenging circumstances. He has been instrumental in developing the global fight against BDS. He worked with us at UJA to create a cutting-edge conference co-sponsored at the United Nations, highlighting Israel's pioneering and innovative technology to combat domestic violence, and he has been our partner in countless other initiatives. Ambassador, we are immensely grateful for all the critical work you do to strengthen Israel and our global Jewish community. Now it is my great pleasure to call you forward to speak with us. Ambassador Erdan.
Thank you, Amy, for that warm introduction. Prime Minister of the State of Israel, Naftali Bennett, Israel's new Consul General in New York, Mr. Asaf Zamir, good luck. My dear friend, Mark Wilf, distinguished guests. First of all, Prime Minister Bennett, now that you're done with your speech at the UN, it's time for your really important speech of the day. But seriously, it is very important that you highlighted, on the one hand, the bias against Israel at the UN, which we saw again recently during the Durban commemoration event, and on the other hand, that you emphasized that many countries refused to participate in the event. They did so because they see Israel's many contributions to the world, and that we are a peace-seeking nation. These are the message that I, along with our many friends here in the room and in the United States, share all year around. Thank you very much for that. Friends, on Sukkot, we leave our permanent home and bring the Arba Minim with us into the Sukkah. We build a new temporary home with 4 different species of plants. The message of Sukkot and the unification of the Arba Minim is one that we need to carry with us all year. Israel and the Jewish people face real challenges, be it anti-Semitism, Iran, or Hamas. Unfortunately, there are also growing voices here in the United States that threaten both Israel and the safety of the American Jewish community. As the many meetings I held with Democratic representatives and the results of the vote in the House reaffirm, the vast majority of the Democratic Party supports Israel. However, we cannot ignore the extended squad and the trends in American society. The extended squad's behavior surrounding the Iron Dome defense system proves that they are either ignorant or anti-Semitic. Do they really not understand that the Iron Dome saves both Israeli and Palestinian lives? If Israel didn't have Iron Dome to protect our citizens from the thousands of rockets that Hamas fired, we may have needed to respond with a ground operation that would have inevitably resulted in many more lives lost. It is one thing to criticize Israel, that is legitimate, but it is a completely different thing to oppose protecting the lives of Israeli civilians from the rockets fired by a designated terrorist organization. This hate verges on anti-Semitism. While this vote was an important show of support for the State of Israel, we must not forget it was on a defense system. We cannot grow complacent. It is now our responsibility to make sure that we maintain that majority in other votes as well, and this will be challenging. Friends, our unity is the key to overcoming all of these threats and expressions of hate. As ambassador, I have made it my mission to strengthen old ties and build new bridges between Israel and all communities in the United States, which is crucial to maintaining the strong bipartisan support for Israel. First and foremost, strengthening the vital connection between the Jewish state and all parts of American Jewry. I also put an emphasis on building relationships with all of the diverse groups in the United States, especially the Afro-American, Latino, and Asian American communities. Our sukkah should be a place where all are welcome. This will probably be the last time that I will address you all in a forum like this as Israel's ambassador to the United States. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the incredible work that you do and for all of the support you have given me. It has been an honor to work with you. Thank you very much. I knew this long before I began my position, but today I have an entirely new appreciation for it. The American Jewish community is the backbone of the critically important Israel-US alliance. Since assuming my role, I have had the honor of building on that important alliance, working with the administration on expanding the Abraham Accords and finding new countries to join our circle of peace in the region. We also worked closely during Operation Guardian of the Walls to ensure Israel's right to defend our citizens and to thwart attempts to attack us at the UN. I hope that the progress we made in the past few months on the visa waiver program, also of course thanks to your efforts, Mr. Prime Minister, will soon allow Israelis to visit our closest ally more easily. And finally, I would like to take this opportunity to wish Mike Herzog, who will be taking over as the ambassador to Washington, and my friend Asaf Zamir, the new Consul General here in New York, be'atzlacha in their new roles. They are both extremely talented and capable, and I look forward to working with them and to continue working with all of you as ambassador to the United Nations. Thank you very much. Chag Sameach, everyone.
Thank you, Ambassador Adon, and again, thank you for your service in Washington, and we look forward to continued working with you in your role at the UN. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, we are honored today to be joined in person and by Zoom by the leadership of so many of the vital organizations of Jewish life in North America and around the world. We are grateful to you for all and everything you do for the Jewish people. Kol hakavod. Of course, it is impossible to invite everyone to speak who should, by rights, receive such an honor, or we would definitely not make it home in time for Shmini Atzeret. Therefore, to represent all of the wonderful organizations who support and love the State of Israel and its people, I'm proud to invite the national president of Hadassah, the Women's Zionist organization, Rhoda Smala, to share a few words of greeting to the Prime Minister. Hadassah was founded right here in New York City in 1912 by the incomparable Henrietta Zold and has for more than a century been a beacon of light in supporting health care, youth aliyah, and vital advocacy for the Jewish state. Rhoda, please share your remarks.
Thank you, Mark, for your introduction. Prime Minister Bennett, Ambassador Erdan, Amy Bresman, Eric Fingerhut, distinguished guests here in New York and around the world on Zoom. It is a great honor to be part of this group of prominent Jewish leaders. I am proud to be the national president of Hadassah, the Women's Zionist Organization of America, the organization that has 300,000 members around the country, members in every congressional district in the United States. We are committed to the land, the people, and the future of Israel. Hadassah is proud to be partnering with many of the organizations here today with the charge of combating anti-Semitism and the BDS movement. We are strengthening Holocaust education in the U.S. at the federal and local state levels. Together, we carry the flag for pro-Israel Americans from coast to coast. Our members and recognized leaders in the advocacy community, and we are taking action in a variety of ways. In addition to owning and financially supporting the Hadassah Medical Organization in Jerusalem, we are creating new points of connections between Israelis and Americans through medical partnerships agreements in Congress, because we know that Israel's health tech, biotech, medtech, and pharmaceutical sectors, as well as hospitals like the Hadassah Medical Organization, represent the gold standard of medical care and research. Last year, we were the leading champion for legislation which enhanced both countries' abilities to detect, treat, and prevent COVID-19. Hadassah is also a voice at the UN, where we enjoy special consultative status with the UN Economic and Social Council to change what is taught in the UNRWA-run schools. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are fed anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist lessons in the classroom. This has got to change, and we proudly champion efforts to reform this agency. Prime Minister Bennett, Hadassah's new CEO, Naomi Adler, and I extend an invitation to you the next time we are in Jerusalem to tour Hadassah Hospital with us. We also offer all the leadership here today to come and visit Hadassah Hospital and its beautiful Chagall windows. We are proud that Hadassah Hospital is truly an example of a bridge to peace through medicine, because it provides advanced medical care to all, regardless of race, ethnicity, or nationality. Prime Minister, speaking for all of the American Jewish organizations, we thank you for all that you do and all that you will continue to do for Israel and the Jewish people. As Hadassah's founder, Henrietta Zold, said, "Make my eyes look to the future." Prime Minister, the future is in your hands. We know you'll make the right choices for Israel and for the diaspora. We wish you a Hag Sameach and a safe journey back to our beloved Israel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhoda. It is now my honor to welcome the newly appointed Consul General of Israel in New York, Asaf Zamir. He is accompanying the Prime Minister on this important visit and will officially take the reins in New York a couple of weeks from now. Previous to this appointment, Mr. Zamir was the first Deputy Mayor of Tel Aviv, member of the Knesset, and Minister of Tourism for the State of Israel. Please welcome Mr. Asaf Zamir.
Prime Minister Bennett, His Excellency Ambassador Erdan, Amy, Mark, thank you very much. You won't be missing Shmini Atzeret because of me. I'll be very, very short. One of the former consuls told me that when you meet Jewish leadership and you don't have an opening line, use the late Ariel Sharon's line and say, I come here from Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the state of Israel. I told him, but I'm from Tel Aviv, so I can't use that. So I come here from Tel Aviv, best city in the world, to what might challenge that city. And I come with great expectations to work together and to face some of the huge challenges the state of Israel has encountered in the near past. I expect to do it with everyone and to serve everyone. I know this is off protocol, so I just wanted to say happy holidays, to take this opportunity to publicly thank Mr. Israel Nitzan, which has been acting Consul General in a very, very crucial time of political instability in Israel. And happy holiday, and thank you very much.
Okay, now Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister assumed office, Naftali Bennett, as Israel's 13th Prime Minister on June 13th of this year. Prime Minister Bennett may be new in his role as Prime Minister, but he is no stranger to our North American Jewish community, having served as Minister of Defense, Minister of Education, Minister of Diaspora Affairs, Minister of Economy, Minister of Religious Affairs, and as Chief of Staff to former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In each of these leadership roles, he has maintained very close contact with our community and has always made himself available for consultation and collaboration on the wide range of issues that have come under his purview. Prime Minister Bennett is no stranger to our North American Jewish community in other ways as well. He was born in Haifa to parents who made Aliyah from San Francisco, one of the many Jewish federations represented on this Zoom. The Prime Minister and his wife Gilad, who are parents of 4 children, lived here in New York for a time early in the Prime Minister's successful business career, which followed a distinguished military career in the Israel Defense Forces. In his inaugural address to the Knesset, Prime Minister Bennett said, "The state of Israel is not just another country. It is the dream of generations of Jews, from Marrakesh to Budapest, from Baghdad to San Francisco, a dream we merited to see realized every day before our very eyes. Each generation has its own challenges, and out of each generation comes the leaders that can overcome them." Mr. Prime Minister, we who gather today, both virtually and in this room, share your view. Israel is not to us just another country, but the dream of our parents and grandparents and our organizational forebears. We are also aware, as you so eloquently stated, that each generation of leaders has a unique responsibility to both carry on the legacies we inherited and also to address the unique challenges of our time. Addressing those challenges brought you to the rostrum of the United Nations General Assembly today. We welcome you as you come from that momentous occasion. We thank you for your service to our people and the state of Israel. We wish you and your family a Shana Tova and a Chag Sameach, and we invite you to address us. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, Mr. Naftali Bennett.
Have a seat. Man, I wish my mom were here. Mark and Amy, thank you so much. Ambassador Erdan, who's doing a phenomenal job here, making our voice heard. And when he speaks, you literally hear his voice. We're good friends in government and the cabinet. Whenever he spoke, even whispered, everyone was silent. I want to wish you Asaf the success. And I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of you and tell you how much it means for me as Prime Minister of Israel to know that all of you on Zoom and here and across the states, you have our backs. You have our back, and it just means a lot because we're, as I described today, we're working darn hard in a very tough area, to build an optimistic, energetic, can-do country, and knowing that each and every one of you is working always to strengthen us means so much. I bring with me a new spirit from Jerusalem, the eternal capital. It's a spirit of goodwill. It's a spirit of working together. This government, which was an accident that turned into a purpose, I hadn't planned in a million years to be in a government with the folks I'm in. And I'd never thought it would work, let alone be the prime minister. I mean, to begin with, Israelis aren't an easy group, right? But we were really, I want to share with you the story of the government because it's very relevant in a moment also for our relationship. So we were in 4 consecutive elections. The air was poisonous. Poisonous. And there was a sense of helplessness in the air. People were despaired. Like, what's the point going and putting a ballot for the 5th time if you're just going to get the same deadlock? And I remember it was Shabbat morning where I had to make a decision because I was the guy in the middle. I'm good at negotiations, taking a small number and leverage. But my point was that I collected my kids and my wife in the kitchen, and I said, listen, Abba is about to do something really unpopular. Lots of people are going to call Abba very bad names, but I want you to know why I'm doing it. Because I care for our country. And if we don't do this, if we don't sit together, people with profoundly different ideas about everything pretty much, if we don't sit together, this thing's going to tear apart. And we do have a legacy. The Jewish people, we've got this bug that haunts us of division. We lost our first Jewish home to division between Israel and Judea. By the way, do you folks know what was the specific reason they separated? Anyone know? What was the igniter? It was taxes. Yeah. Solomon's son, Rehoboam, decided to raise taxes. Bad idea. So we lost 80% of the Jewish people. All of us are descendants only of Judea and Benjamin, right? And then we regrouped, formed another house, another home, another Jewish state. The first one survived 80 years. The first temple, 80 years. King David and Solomon, about 80 years. The second temple, or the second commonwealth of the Jewish people, survived as a sovereign and united country about 73 years during the Maccabees. And then again, internal strife tore us apart. So the Jewish people have never exceeded 80 years in Eretz Israel as a sovereign united state. We're now 73 years old. Man, this time, we're not going to let it fall apart. We're not going to let it fall apart. That's why I took this step. But I'll tell you something. And because I do harbor my opinions. It's amazing. It's working. The people that sometimes they demonized me and sometimes vice versa, I demonized them, when we sit together and we have to tackle day in, day out real life problems. We're not talking about kumbaya in some seminar. We've got to run a country. We've got to get a budget done. We've got to open up import to reduce prices. We've got to take care of COVID. Bring a booster, not bring a booster. There's stuff to be done. Well, they love the country not an iota less than I do. The right doesn't have a monopoly on patriotism. The left does not have a monopoly on human rights or the desire for peace. We all love Israel. We all share a deep passion to build a better future. And when you have goodwill, that's all you need. Goodwill and a bit of trust, it can work, and it is working. So this is indeed the most diverse government in Israel's history, and I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, and I'm determined to make it work. One of the big missions of this generation, of mine as Prime Minister of Israel, is our future. The future of Israel and the Jews. Now, it's the first time, almost 3,000 years, that the biggest concentration of Jews is again the state of Israel. Even during Second Temple, all the Jews, or most of them, were in America, in Babylon. That was America of then. Yeah, you know, modern. Could get good cereal. And I remember my mom, after making Aliyah, well, she always told us, back in the 70s, they didn't have cereal in Israel, and they didn't have one-time diapers. That was a disaster. So now it's the first time, just a few years ago, we, again, after thousands of years, the biggest single concentration of Jews in the world is the state of Israel. And that also means that there's going to be a need to rethink our relationship. Because, you know, since the inception of Israel, and actually it predates the inception of Israel, Israel has been the project of the Jewish people. But we're doing okay. We're strong, economy's growing, great high tech. Now we have to redesign our relationship. For me, it's really natural. I grew up in this relationship. You know, my dad, may rest in peace, Jim Bennett, tell you a story. The first time, so Six-Day War, May of 67, my dad and mom, two secular Jews in San Francisco, studied at Berkeley. You can imagine where they, my dad, by the way, was arrested on a demonstration, on a sit-in. You know what a sit-in is? In a San Francisco hotel that would not hire black people, and he was arrested, and I'm darn proud of him for that. So the sixth, in May, Nasser closes the Straits of Tehran, and my mom and dad, who had no connection to this remote state with camels or whatever, they became obsessed. What will happen to the Jewish state? And right after the war, they got on the first plane, made Aliyah to Israel. The first time Abba comes to a shul, so they say, "Ech korim lecha?" And he says, "Jim." And they say, "Lo, lo, 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 Hashem bi'ivrit." So he says, "Oh, Yaakov, Ben, Shloshim." So he had absolutely no connection. It's going to take a bit of time for... And for me, we're one. We're one. When a Jew in Pennsylvania gets hurt, I hurt. When a Jew in France gets hurt, we feel the pain, because we're one. But now's the point in time where we can bring our relationship and the very meaning of what we are to the next level, the next step in Zionism. Because Zionism, modern day Zionism, was originally formed to create a safe haven for Jews, right? Dreyfus, Herzl, safe haven. A shelter. That was the raison d'etre of Israel, a safe shelter. But now we're about 130 years in, since the beginning of modern-day Zionism. Is that a good enough purpose, mission statement? It's important. But, you know, there's some things that are more inspirational than shelters. Shelter is the basis, but we have a purpose. And the purpose is to shine light. That's what we're about. That's what the Jewish people are about. And today at the UN, I shared my fundamental view of what Israel is about, or ought to be, a lighthouse in a stormy sea. A lighthouse has strong foundations. Without that, it won't be there. So we have a strong IDF, strong economy, high-tech, cyber, Mossad, you name it. But that's only the first step. We are about doing good. And I think if we want to inspire the next generation, the younger kids, we have to together work on it. And I say together because it's not that I'm coming here with an accurate formula. We've got to work this out together. And if there's one thing I want to import from American Jewry to Israel, it's the ability to listen. It's the ability to not define people and put them in a box. Right? In Israel, so you have Chiloni, secular. You have Dati, Kippa Sruga, Knitted Yarmulke. You have black, Haredi. You have knitted black, actually, now. You've got these shades, right? The specific, but if you're just 3 centimeters off, I can't, no, not in my shul, no. And here, you're just a Jew, and you're welcome. Whether you're Haredi, Reform, Orthodox, Modern Orthodox, you are welcome. And that's something that we need to import the fact that we embrace everyone. And that's the dialogue that we're opening up. It doesn't mean we're going to agree on everything. We're not. But we're going to talk to each other, and we're going to listen to each other. At the same time, while we're doing all of this, we are in the toughest neighborhood in the world. Sometimes I meet leaders of other countries. They don't get it. They don't get it, right? When I grew up, spent a couple of years in Teaneck, New Jersey, so you don't wake up in the morning and a few kilometers someone wants to shoot a rocket at your home. In Israel, if these were the borders of Israel, you've got Hezbollah on our border, wants to destroy us. You've got Iranian militias on the other border. You've got Hamas. You've got Islamic Jihad. For heaven's sakes, we still have ISIS in the Sinai. That was supposed to be gone with in the Sinai. So all of them are quite literally on our border. And that's why we need to remain strong. And that's what we're doing. We just are putting through now a huge budget increase in our security. We've got a lot of work to do. We will prevail. Some people are talking about Iran as a done deal. No, it's not a done deal. We're not going to give up, and we will prevent them from acquiring a nuclear weapon. We're working hard with our great friend, the United States of America, but we still have a very clear compass that we were taught long ago. Im ein anili mili. At the end of the day, while we invite and are bringing in more and more partners in the region, we will not outsource our security to anyone, even to our best friends. It's up to us. No one's going to stop us. We need to do what we need to do, and we are doing what we need to do. The latest vote in Congress was telling. I was very happy with the great result, 420 to 9. I want to make a point, though. It's not only about the fact that Iron Dome is defensive. It's broader than that. Look, I was here 20 years ago with all of you. I lived in Manhattan during 9/11. I saw one of the I'd been at my office in my high-tech firm at 56 on 6th. And they said the building fell, and you remember all the phones. So I couldn't believe it. I walked down, and I looked, and I saw only one building on fire. I could not believe it. Went back to my company, said to everyone, get out of here, go north. You remember? Everyone was walking north that day. And the lesson that the world learned is that when there's swamps of terror, you can't ignore it. Because if you ignore it, those mosquitoes will come to hunt you. The flip side is you don't want to get into a 20-year quagmire. So you're sort of between a rock and a hard place. And in that sense, indeed, what President Biden says again and again, if there weren't an Israel, we ought to have invented one, it's right on, because that's exactly the point. We are 9 million boots on the ground. We are fighting. We are day in, day out in touch with those terrorists. We're gaining intelligence, methodologies, and we're fending them without ever asking America to send even one troop, and we never will. We are not the problem. We're the solution. Smack in the middle of the toughest region in the world, we're fighting the problem and solving it. Not solving, but managing it. We're not going anywhere. We're here to stay there. And that's why it's not only about Iron Dome. The very essence of us here means the terror is at bay to a degree. So the very essence of Israel acting where it is defends people across the world. And I can tell you right now that not a week and a half go by without us, because we're in friction with these terror organizations, we save lives. I can't share the specifics, but we'll call up someone in some country and say, listen, right now on this street, this building, go up to 7th floor. In your country, you're going to find a terror squad. Go get them. And we do this again and again. We're saving lives because we're there. You can't run away from terror. And finally, to merge the two things. We talked about light and we talked about security. But in a sense, you know, tomorrow's Simchat Torah. One of the things that always strikes me about our Torah is it's Torat Chaim. Judaism is about life, but real life. Right? The epitome in Judaism is not to go to some remote mountain and isolate yourself. No. That's considered a vice. It's bad. The epitome of Judaism is facing reality and bringing your values into real life friction. And think about it. How easy is it to be in Brussels and to theorize about how you ought to defend yourself against terrorists? But we're doing it. And we're pioneering how do you fight against asymmetric war? What do you do when they embed a missile launcher into a home? What is the morality? I'll tell you what's not. Not doing anything just because they embedded a missile launcher is immoral. You got to fight back. But how? So Israel today represents values in a very difficult situation. Not in the ivory towers that are disconnected from reality. And we're figuring out, those 9 million people out there that I'm so humbled to lead, day in, day out, we're showing the world how to be a moral, but a real moral country facing the worst enemies of the world, yet thriving and optimistic and energetic and doing good and doing well. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for your ongoing support. And I want to invite you to the ongoing and open dialogue. We're going to try and listen. I'll tell you the last story. Because when I came and founded my high-tech company, I'm Israeli. And the company was Israeli-American, and it's sort of two different cultures. It took a while. So I was on a phone call. You remember they had cell phones you could do like this. I was on a phone call, and the guy who was VP strategy, an American guy called Brian Durman. So he comes into the room, and I'm on the call, and I say, and he says, Naf, I don't know what that means. So it takes time. I'll just give you one or two pieces of advice, which you probably know. Israel has unique physics. In Israel, if an elevator door opens, everyone can enter before people leave. It actually works. And in Israel, here's the most important tip. It is profoundly impolite to let the other person finish his sentence. Folks, I want to thank you. Toda rabba. I love you on behalf of the people of Israel. Toda rabba. Toda rabba.
So much. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, for sharing your time and reflections with us today. I'd like everyone to please remain seated until the Prime Minister and his entourage leave the room. Thank you all again for joining us today. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you.
Great event.
That's great.
Okay, that was a thrill.
It was really nice.
That was nice to see you again.
So personable, very.